A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum, my dear students. I'm sure you must be fine, hale and hearty wherever you are. We're continuing with our lecture on the factors that affect decision making. In our previous lecture, we had talked about certain factors which affect the process or the course of our decision making. And in that, we were just midway and we were talking about the intellect. In intellect, we had talked about the knowledge, lack of creative thinking, and now we'll move to the next point, and that is lack of logical thinking. I would not like to go into details as far as these 2 points are concerned, because we have to cover this just after some time, and then we'll talk about it as to what are the contents of the creative thinking and the logical thinking. If you look towards the slide, our next point is rigidity. Now, rigidity means to become stagnant, to become one-sided, to focus your opinion, to focus your mind. You do not leave any room for alternative thinking, for moving out of a certain corridor of thinking. And that is really very, very harmful as far as the process of decision making is concerned. Why it is so? It is so because time is always the deciding factor for many things. Time has its own speed, it has its own temperament, it has its own demands, it has its own requirement, it has its own constraints, it has its own offerings to you. So, if something happens today which had happened 100 years ago, the decision that at that time was taken probably will be absolutely outdated today. Just for the fun's sake, the man used to fight with bow and arrow, and then the maximum, he had a sword on a horseback. But today, this complete scenario has absolutely changed. The man used to write on the stones and then on the animal skin, and then he created the mud slates, and then ultimately he came to the paper industry, and then he started printing the words. And today, even that book system appears to be diminishing as the computer has taken place. And when the printing was in initial stages, it used to take months together to print a book of 100 years. But today, a company has printed a book of 1,000 pages in 8 hours only. 1,000 copies of the book. So if you try to be rigid, if you try to tie down yourself to the past, or, for example, any decision or any thought that you think is appropriate, it may not be true. So we have to be flexible. We have to see all around. Jahane taza ki afkare taza se hai namud. So we have to have fresh ideas. We have to be with the time. We have to benefit from the contemporary concepts, from the contemporary aids, from the contemporary things which are there to support us. I'll not go into further details as far as rigidity is concerned. If you put your foot down on one thing and you are bent upon compelling the whole process or the whole people just to be with your opinion, it may not be true. So we must avoid rigidity in the process of decision making. If you look towards the slide, the next is not being methodical. Remember, not being methodical, what does it connote? It entails that you should not make the decisions just in a casual manner, just seeing at the face of it, just seeing what's written on the wall, or just believing the hearsays, or just discussing the things in a very, very luxurious or relaxed mood. Probably you'll not be doing justice to your own cause, to your own objective, whatever you want to do. We have studied the concept of system in detail, and that says systems always work with the methods. So, when you are taking decision, you have to follow an appropriate, well-designed, updated method. If you don't follow a method, rest assured that you will be falling in false paradise, and at some place you are going to make a mistake. What's the method? The method is you have a bowl of jewels. The non-methodological thing is, non-systemic thing is, that if somebody tells you, asks you, how many beads are these? You just say, roughly 1,000. Well, that is simply an approximation. It is simply a guess. You haven't done it according to any method. So your answer is absolutely wrong. The proper method is you have to empty the bowl and count the beads, or the diamonds, or whatever it is. And after properly counting, your method will tell you what's the exact number. It may be 5,321. So if you don't go in this mathematical way and you just work on approximations or just safe guesses, the process of decision making will be injured, and it will not help you, of course, to reach some correct decision. So if you go wrong at this very place, then the process that has to develop ultimately, that is certainly not going to be correct. So this whole effort which you did up to this point, that will go waste. Let's see the next slide. It says emotions. Emotions are something which are revolutionary, sometimes very friendly, sometimes very inhospitable. Sometimes they help you a lot. Sometimes they create unmanageable problems for you. बसा औकात आपने एक फ़िक्रा सुना होगा कि फ़लाँ शख्स बड़ा जज्बाती है, इसका मतलब क्या है? इसका मतलब यह है कि जज्बाती होना कोई बहुत बड़ी क्रेडिटेबल चीज नहीं है. इट्स नॉट रियली अ बिग कॉम्प्लीमेंट. इन फैक्ट, most of the times it's a negative force. You must have heard from lot many great people like Hazrat Ali Karmulawaj, as he says, बहादुर वो नहीं जो मैदान जंग में किसी को कत्ल करता है, बल्कि बहादुर वो है जो अपने गुस्से पर काबू पाता है. Such like things have been said by lot many people. People like Aristotle, Socrates, and many other thinkers, of course. ये गुस्सा जज्बात की एक किस्म है. Likewise, if you are too much in a jolly mood, again, you are deviating from serious thinking. And if you deviate from serious thinking, rest assured, you're landing into indecisiveness, not decisiveness. तो जब हम फैसला साजी के अमल से गुजर रहे होते हैं, तो ये सबसे दुश्वार बात है कि हम अपने जज्बात को लगाम दे के रखें, उनको कंट्रोल करके रखें, उन पर काबू पा के रखें, और ये बहुत मुश्किल काम है. जब हमें कोई फैसला करना होता है तो हमारे जहन में हजार हा चीज़ें होती हैं, हमारे दिल में हजार हा चीज़ें होती हैं. हम कहीं गालिब के तरफदार होते हैं तो कहीं किसी के लिए नापसंदीदगी के जज्बात भी रखते हैं. हम किसी खाने वाली चीज़ को पसंद करते हैं और एक दूसरी खाने वाली चीज़ को नापसंद भी करते हैं. हम कुछ मखसूस मिजाज के लोगों को पसंद करते हैं और कुछ मखसूस मिजाज के लोगों को नापसंद भी करते हैं. और इसमें लुत्फ की बात यह है कि हम कभी अपने ऊपर कोई चेक नहीं रखते. वी डोंट एनालाइज आवरसेल्फ. हम अपना एहतसाब नहीं करके रखते. यूजुअली वी टेक इट फॉर ग्रांटेड दैट दिस इज आवर टेम्परामेंट एंड इट्स करेक्ट, एंड पीपल आर रिक्वायर्ड टू बिहेव लाइक दैट. एंड इफ समबडी डजंट बिहेव according to your desires, he is a persona non grata for you. That's a personality that you don't like. ये सारी बातें आपके फैसला साजी के अमल में भी इनका अमल दखल होता है. इमोशंस में जो सबसे पहली बात आपके डिसीजन मेकिंग प्रोसेस को अफेक्ट करती है या मुतासर करती है, दैट इज fear of going wrong. Now, try to understand these realities and try to explore them in your own personality. We are very confident at the face service level about many things. But when the practical things come, when we are in the field, when we are in those shoes, suddenly it is revealed on us that we were not competent. We didn't have enough knowledge. उस वक्त हमारे ऊपर एक बहुत बड़ा खौफ ये होता है कि हम कोई गलती ना कर दें, हम कोई गलत फैसला ना कर दें. मिसाल के तौर पे हम एक छोटी सी किसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में एक डिसिप्लिन के, एकेडमिक डिसिप्लिन के इंचार्ज हैं. हम हर मीटिंग में उस पर तनकीद तो करते हैं कि इसमें ये ठीक नहीं है, इसमें वो ठीक नहीं है. लेकिन अगर एक दिन हमें यह कह दिया जाए कि ऑल राइट, यू प्रिपेयर अ न्यू सिलेबस, दिस वन सेंटेंस मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स it will put us to our place. So all of a sudden we start realizing कि यूं न था, मैंने फ़कत चाहा था यूं हो जाए. तो हमें समझ आती है कि शायद हम ये पूरा सिलेबस खुद तरतीब देने के काबिल नहीं हैं. अहल नहीं है. Now, this is invisible fear which enters into our brain and it plays its vital role. When we are afraid of committing a mistake, that means we have lost confidence. And if we have lost confidence, then we are not going to do the good things. Then we are not going to take the right decisions. जब हमारा एतमाद अपनी ज़ात ही से उठ जाता है, तो उस वक्त अगर हम ये सोचें कि हम फैसला भी दुरुस्त कर लेंगे, उस बेएतमादी के माहौल में भी या उस कैफियत में भी, I have all my doubts, will not be able to do that, will not be able to render justice to the thing. So, to remove this fear, what's the answer? The answer is speciality in the field. It's constant study, knowing its background, knowing its contemporary conditions, already having evaluated, analytically seen what likely can happen tomorrow. Anyone who doesn't keep tomorrow in mind is definitely in loss even for today. He roams in the past. And those who roam in the past, they always believe in Bidram Sultan Bud. वो सिर्फ इस बात पे फख्र महसूस करते हैं कि उनका बाप बादशाह था. लेकिन हमारा वक्त, हमारी अपॉइंटमेंट, हमारी जिम्मेदारी जो हमें मिली है एक फैसला साजी के लिए, उसके लिए it's not good enough qualification to be son of a king. The big qualification is to be competent and to overcome our fear to commit mistakes. And that can only happen if we are really confident about our subject, about our discipline, about our field, about the crisis that we are confronted with. I'm sure that much will suffice to understand the fear of making mistakes. What's the next point? The next point is impatience. Impatience, जिसे बेसब्री आप कहते हैं. This is really a big test of a human being. When a crisis means a turning point, as we defined it right in the beginning. Turning point, which is absolutely sudden, which happens abruptly, and then one is in a very, very different state of mind. He had not expected it, and suddenly it happens. We got the example of a patient who was all right, improving, but suddenly he reaches a critical stage of life. Now that's the crisis. Otherwise, in the world, nobody knows. As the earthquake struck our northern areas, that was a sudden thing which nobody could imagine, nobody could visualize. So, it occurred, and it occurred with all its brutalities, all its devastations, all its inhospitalities, and everything against our judgment. Now, such are the occasions when it's a prerequisite for a decision maker to keep himself composed, to be patient. रब्बे कायनात ने जो हमें अपनी किताब मुबीन में ये फरमाया कि इन्नल्लाह मअस साबिरीन, अल्लाह उनके साथ होता है जो सब्र करते हैं. दरअसल सब्र का मतलब भूखा मरना नहीं है. सब्र का मतलब ये नहीं कि आप 4 दिन रोटी ना खाएं और लेटे रहें. नहीं, सब्र का मतलब ये है कि जब आप पर इम्तहान का वक्त आता है तो आप साबित कदम रहें, आप अपने हवास को कायम रखें, हवास बाख्तर ना हो जाएं, हालात को देखते हुए उनसे इतने खौफ ना हो जाएं कि आपकी सोचने समझने की सलाहियतें, आपका इदराक, आपका फ़हम व तफ़हीम और आपकी जो अक्ल सलीम है वही एट स्टेक हो जाए. And such like circumstances, if you lose your mind, if you become very sentimental, if you become very disturbed, if you become partially divided as far as your thinking is concerned, if you become frustrated or disappointed, any way you may take a turn that is going to affect the process of decision making. And it will affect the process of decision making drastically. Because when you go impatient, then you take decisions abruptly, without any logic, without any reason, without any deliberation, without any logic. And if all these things are eliminated, they are the basic requirements which are required by a correct decision that you have to take. It can happen to yourself. You plan something for yourself for a couple of years, and ultimately the things went 180 degrees different. Now, God forbid, you must hear the news and you study it. Many people commit suicide. Many people, they hurt themselves. Many people, they resort to addictions. Many people, they leave the path of struggle and they just become stagnant, and ultimately they are rendered to be useless personalities. And after all, what's the use of being ashraful makhluqat? Why are we ashraful makhluqat? Only two differences from the animals: that we can think what's right and what's wrong, and we can speak, express it also. And both these things work in an ideal manner if we stay confident and if we stay patient. And if we lose patience, then we are losing the battle also. Let's see what else is the trait in our emotions which affects our decision-making process. See the slide. It says, becoming anxious. Now, what's becoming anxious? Anxious means you are conquered by the anxiety. Now, anxiety is absolutely different than whatever we have discussed before. Anxiety is inside you. And anxiety means that you are really not in a straight, good and normal frame of mind. And when you are anxious, then you don't listen to your colleagues, you don't listen to the participants, you're not attentive, you don't write the correct things the way they should be written, and you don't even apprehend or perceive whatever is to be perceived. You know, the people who are patients of anxiety, they take a lot of medicines. Why they take medicines? Because anxiety can lead to any serious consequences. Whatever has happened, let's take it that way. It has happened. I'll quote you the examples from our real life. Let's say we had to go to Karachi. We purchased a ticket. The seat was confirmed. Due to some traffic jam, you missed the flight. Now, if you go to the airport and start crying over there and start cribbing and start shouting and losing your mind and blaming lot many people, well, you're not doing the justified thing. And that's not the correct path to take a decision. Well, it has gone, and it was reasons beyond you, reasons beyond your control. Now you have to take the next decision rather than cursing the past, why it happened so, and why so and so had stopped his vehicle at such and such point, and why this collision took place, why this accident was there, etc. If you try to create reasons, you will be able to create 1000 reasons. अक्ल यार है, 100 भेस बदल लेती है. ये वो अक्ल है जो अक्ल सलीम नहीं होती. And then it puts you in many confusions, in many cribs, in many disappointments. आप एक मखसूस किस्म की मजलूम शख्सियत अपने आप को बना लेते हैं. ये बड़ी तल्ख बातें हैं, लेकिन ये ज़िंदगी के हक़ाइक़ हैं. और इन्हीं चीज़ों से क़ता नज़र करके, इन्हीं चीज़ों से दूर हट के, इन्हीं चीज़ों को निगलेक्ट करके हम अपनी ज़िंदगी के भी और अपने करियर के भी और इज्तमाई सतह पर भी बहुत से गलत फ़ैसले करते हैं. सो एंक्शियस होना, मग़मूम हो जाना, दुख ज़दा हो जाना, एक हद तक तो ये एक फितरती अमल है. दैट शुड बी एक्सेप्टेड. बट टू लेट एंग्जाइटी कमांड योर माइंड एंड हार्ट इज रियली not a mistake but equivalent to a sin, and you have to pay the price for that. Therefore, when you are in the process of making a decision, remember that being anxious, getting worried and sweating around and shouting around, or keeping just quiet and not even talking to anyone, and becoming mum, it's not going to help you. You still have to stay and make an effort to accept it as a challenge and tell yourself that you have the abilities and you apply all possible abilities to overcome the problem to the extent that you can. Well, it's not written anywhere that all types of crises can be very well controlled, managed, or eliminated. No. To some extent you may be controlled, to some extent you may be able to avoid, to some extent you may be able to preempt, and to some extent you may be able to cope up with the crisis. Or eliminate them once for all is a dream that may come true, but very exceptionally. So, don't learn to be anxious. बहुत ज़्यादा अपनी ज़ात को उदास करके आप किसी फैसले पे नहीं पहुंच सकेंगे. कि उदास लोगों से जाके कहना उदास रहना कमाल फ़न है, जमाल फ़न है, बिल्कुल ऐसा नहीं है. ये हकीकत से आंख चुराने वाली बात है. ये ख्वाब है दीवाने का. अपने आप को इन खुद साख्ता उदासियों, खुद साख्ता मायूसियों में मुब्तला न करें, वरना ज़िंदगी के किसी भी कदम पे आप कोई फ़ैसला नहीं कर सकेंगे. और जो कोई फ़ैसला नहीं कर सकता, वो कोई सक्सेसफुल स्टेप नहीं ले सकता, कामयाब कदम वो आगे नहीं बढ़ा सकता किसी भी सूरत में. Let's see what's the other facet of our emotions. This is very interesting. It says, avoiding the hard work. Now remember that many times, or mostly, we make very tall claims. We are very experts in boasting, in claiming things, in saying that we can do this and we can do that and we can do that. But then this hard work, being industrious, being a hard-working person, it's a very difficult job. And it's not a one-day job. It's a constant training. And you have to trained your mind as you trained your body. To become a swimmer, you are properly trained, then you build your stamina, then you learn the techniques, and then of course you get into the water and you can win a couple of prizes. Likewise, if you become an athlete, it doesn't mean that in single one day you'll start running so fast that you break all the records in the history. You will not be able to do that. You still have to learn these things step by step. Likewise, mental training is even more important because the mind controls your body also. Once the mind knows, you'll also use your body in a befitting manner. So, most of the times, we want to dodge the hard-working process. And we don't work hard. That means we are being deprived of many qualities or many plus points that would enter into our mind and make us efficient in the life. So, we do not know many times that we are avoiding the hard work. Or if at the subconscious level we know it, at conscious level we want to deny it. But the fact remains that we suffer from this symptom. And this syndrome should be detected and then it should be treated also. Only then you will be able to reach some good decision. Decision is not a small thing. मैं आपको मीर तकी मीर का, जो बहुत पुराने बुजुर्ग हमारे क्लासिक शायर हैं, उनका एक शेर सुना दूं कि ये कितना मुश्किल काम होता है जिसे हम 1 मिनट में पढ़ के फारिग कर देते हैं. तो वो कहते हैं कि मिसरा कभू कभू कोई मौजू करूं हूं मैं, किस खुश सलीकगी से जिगर खूं करूं हूं मैं. तो ये इतना आसान काम नहीं होता कि आप बैठे और कलम लिया आपने और जनाब आप मीर तकी मीर बन गए, आप गालिब बन गए, आप आइंस्टाइन बन गए, you become Wordsworth, or you become T.S. Eliot, or you become Chaucer. No, it's not that way really. It's a constant process of hard work. और जो शख्स जिंदगी में मेहनत करना, हार्ड वर्क करना नहीं रिकग्नाइज करता, नहीं जानता, इसको प्रैक्टिस नहीं करता, इसको अवॉइड करता है, आई वुड से कि जिसे हम किस्मत कहते हैं या इसे हम खुशनसीबी कहते हैं, वो उसे अवॉइड करती है. सो वी मस्ट ट्रेन आवर माइंड एंड वी मस्ट डेवलप physical stamina to face and manage the crisis when they occur. In the context of emotions, it's a very interesting factor. You know that climatic conditions also affect your emotions. In fact, their effect is so dominating, so mattering, that it affects all the processes. Just see the 4 seasons. When it is scorching hot day, you don't feel like even coming out of your house, of your air-conditioned bedroom or maybe drawing room. When it's winter, you love to stay near the heater where you get the warmth. When it's spring season, now everyone becomes naturally emotional. You want to get out, you want to have recreation, you want to see the budding flowers, you want to see and listen the chirping birds, and you want to roam around and have a fun and have recreation. So all these things they affect your emotions. Likewise, when you are working, when you are in the process of decision making, if you are made to sit in an open ground and the temperature is something like 44 degrees centigrade, you can very well imagine what your feelings would be. If you're sent on a job to draw certain decisions when it's freezing cold and you don't have even a jacket with you, how much interest you will take to make that decision. But if you are sitting in a big room where there are people to support you, where you have the equipment, where you have the computers, where you have the data, where you have the people to assist you, where the circumstances and the atmospheric things and climatic temperament is very conducive, obviously your working ability will enhance and you will be able to take much better decision than being a victim to the climatic conditions. If you are awake the whole night and in the morning you are told to take a very complicated decision, you will not be able to render the goods. But if you are properly relaxed or you are properly fed, you are not very hungry really, and all around the circumstances are supportive, they'll definitely make their point to assist you in the process of decision making. So, here we finish with the participation or interference or effects of emotions, but this is not the end of it. There are many other factors that can be discussed and which would probably go beyond our spectrum or the area or the level that we are trying to study. But the effects of the emotions are much more broader and even much more serious. But this much if you learn, it will be enough for you. Make the foundation and then be progressive and learn about them. Just see the slide. It says thinking skills. Very surprising. Thinking also has skills. That is where the things go wrong, because we have never thought of it. We have never considered it. If we learn to think properly, many problems of life can be solved or many crises can be resolved very comfortably, which we always think are unmanageable. This is a very, very surprising revelation, I would say. Unfortunately, we just see the things sketchily at a very, very ordinary level, at very small level, and we do not really go into details, and we do not even think that our thinking can also improve. We'll have special lectures on our creative thinking, in which we'll prove in our one lecture's time that a topic on which we thought we can't write one page, at the end of the lecture, inshallah, we'll be convinced that we could write even 100 pages on that. The topic on which we will just say it's a fun, we can't speak even 1 minute. By the end of the lecture, by the grace of God Almighty Allah, we'll be convinced that we could speak for hours together on that. What makes it that way? It's only your mental training, your thinking skills, and what are the thinking skills? Look at the slide. The first thing that it tells you is, it says creative thinking. Now, we partially made a note of it in our previous slide, but we didn't go into detail by design. We are now covering it. What are the basic components or the basic parts of our creative thinking? अजीज तालिब इल्मों, आपको जब मैंने सिस्टम के ऊपर और फिर तज्जिया या एनालिसिस के ऊपर लेक्चर जो दिए, तो उसमें हमने बात की थी कि कोई भी चीज़ तन्हा नहीं होती, वो बहुत सी चीज़ों का एक मरकब होती है या एक आमेज़ा होती है, और जब तक उस मरकब को या उस आमेज़े को अलग अलग करके उसके अज्जा को ना देखा जाए तो हमें ये पता नहीं चल सकता कि इसमें क्या प्रॉब्लम है, क्योंकि प्रॉब्लम सारे के सारे आमेज़े में नहीं हो सकती, उसके किसी एक हिस्से में हो सकती है, दो हिस्सों में हो सकती है, तीन में हो सकती है, और उनको ही हमें दुरुस्त करना होता है। सही तशख़ीस हमें उस वक्त तक नहीं हो सकती जब तक हम उसको डीकम्पोज नहीं। इसी तरह ही हमारी क्रिएटिव थिंकिंग भी है, और क्रिएटिव थिंकिंग में भी कुछ अज्जा हैं, कुछ इसके कंपोनेंट्स हैं which we have to take care. Now the first component of creative thinking is originality. What does it really mean when we say originality? This word comes from original, origin or original, and then we say originality. Now, originality has two basic dimensions. I'll not go into greater details. Originality का मतलब ये है कि जिस बहरान को हम स्टडी कर रहे हैं, एनालाइज कर रहे हैं, जिसके बारे में हमने फैसला करना है, उसका एक ओरिजिनलिटी का मकसद तो ये है कि वो किस मकाम से उसका आगाज हुआ, उसका नुक्ता आगाज क्या था, from where it originated. Now once we finalize this question and we are very clear from where it originated, now it will be easier for us to have the future journey to walk on the track. लेकिन अगर हमें यही अंदाज़ा नहीं होगा कि इस एक प्रॉब्लम का आगाज़ कहाँ से होगा, तो हम उसके इख्तिताम को, एंड ऑफ द डिजीज़ को अगर ट्रीट करते रहेंगे और उसके काजेस को ट्रीट नहीं करेंगे, तो देन विल नॉट बी टेकिंग द करेक्ट डिसीजंस। अब हम इसकी दूसरी डायमेंशन को देखते हैं। दूसरी डायमेंशन ये है कि आप खुद अक्ल सलीम के मालिक हैं। जैसे हमने पहले पढ़ा, आपके पास बाकायदा सब्जेक्ट का इल्म भी है, आपको रब्बे जलील ने सोचने की अहलियत भी दी है, तो आप इसको एक नए एंगल से, एक नई जहत से, एक नए पहलू से मौजूदा हालात के पेश नज़र एनालाइज करने की कोशिश कीजिए और सोचने की कोशिश कीजिए। जो आपने उस किताब में पढ़ा था जो आज से 50 साल पहले किसी ने लिखी थी और वो आपके दिमाग में बैठ गया और उसी फार्मूले के साथ आपने इसको देखना शुरू कर दिया, दैट विल नॉट बी द करेक्ट अप्रोच। दैट्स द ओरिजिनल वे। यू डिजाइन योर ओन ओरिजिनल वे, यू डिसाइड योर ओन वे एंड देन start thinking like that. Definitely you will reach the correct decision. Your thinking will be correct. Why? Because बार बार जिस बात की मैं एक तज़किरा करता हूं कि वक्त वो वाहिद चीज़ है जो हर लम्हा नई तब्दीलियां ला के हमारे सामने खड़ा कर देता है, और वो सारी की सारी हमारे लिए चैलेंजेस होते हैं। आज हम जिन चीज़ों से दो चार हैं, उनसे हम पहले नहीं थे। मसलन आज से कुछ बरस पहले तक तो सिर्फ एक गंदम की रोटी होती थी और एक मक्की की रोटी होती थी। ये चावल हमारे ग़िज़ा होते थे। आज हम सैंडविच, हम बर्गर खाते हैं, हम फ्रेंच फ्राइज खाते हैं। हम कोशिश ये करते हैं कि अपने बच्चों को सुबह जो लंच दे के भेजते हैं उसमें भी वो पुरानी माँओं वाला जो पराठा होता था, जो उनमें एक डेवलपमेंट भी बड़ी स्ट्रांग करता था, फिजिकली नरिशमेंट भी उनकी बेहतर होती थी और बोन्स भी उनकी बेहतर डेवलप होती थी, माइंड भी उनका बेहतर डेवलप होता था, उसको हमने छोड़ दिया। दिस इज अ क्वेश्चन। अब जब आप ओरिजिनल थिंकिंग के, क्रिएटिव थिंकिंग से काम नहीं लेंगे तो आपको ये समझ नहीं आएगी कि शहर की ज़िंदगी से चपाती या वो रोटी जो माँ पका के देती थी सुबह, या जो पराठा था, वो क्यों एलिमिनेट हो गया है। देयर मस्ट बी सम रीज़न फॉर दैट। जो हम चिकन छोटा सा, इतना सा, या उसकी एक लेग लेते हैं, एंड द मनी दैट वी स्पेंड ऑन दैट, probably the whole family would not spend the money if the things are cooked at home with the same good old wisdom, good old tradition. But the question is, it has happened. अब हमको जब इसका एनालिसिस करना है, and we have to reach some conclusion, some decision, ये क्यों हुआ है, तो आज की दुनिया को मद्देनजर रख के हमें देखना है कि are there some factors which have compelled the human factors, or a particular segment of the population, or a special class of the people, or certain circumstances which have become unavoidable, उसको आप छोड़ नहीं सकते। कोई ना कोई रीज़न तो होगी ना। लेकिन आज से 50 साल पहले जब इस बर्गर का कोई कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं था, तो उस वक्त से हम ग़िज़ाइयत को लेकर चलना शुरू कर देंगे, तो then we'll not be able to reach some decision. Right, I'm sure we are pretty clear about it. Let's talk about the next thing. The next thing is flexibility. देखें, एक बड़ा पुराना मुहावरा है कि वो शाख जिसमें लचक नहीं होती वो टूट जाती है, उसकी ज़िंदगी ही ख़त्म हो जाती है। सोच एक ऐसा अमल है कि जब तक इसमें लचक नहीं होगी उस वक्त तक ना तो आपके जहन में वुसअत आएगी, your mental horizon will not extend, it will not expand, it will not, this canvas will not become bigger, it will not be able to have bigger, absorptions in it, और विजन आपका ब्रॉडर नहीं होगा। और अगर आपका विजन ब्रॉड नहीं होगा तो डेफिनेटली फिर वो कुएं के मेंढक वाली मिसाल ही बाकी रह जाएगी, एंड दैट नेवर हेल्प्स अस इन क्लाइंबिंग द लैडर्स towards success or victory in our life or achieving our goals. अब हम अगली बात देखते हैं कि आपकी सोच में फ्लुएंसी भी होनी चाहिए। सोच का तांता कड़ी से कड़ी मिली होनी चाहिए, जैसे एक जंजीर होती है। ये ना हो कि आपने एक बात तो इस कान से सोची और दूसरी बात जो है वो इस कान से सोची, और इन दोनों में ज़मीन आसमान का एक राइट है और एक लेफ्ट है। राइट एंड लेफ्ट, प्रोज एंड कॉन्स की बात नहीं करता हूँ, पॉजिटिव नेगेटिव सोचना चाहिए हमें, लेकिन ये ना हो कि आपका तांता बीच में से टूट जाए और सिर्फ सर को सोच के फिर आप अपने पाँव को सोचना शुरू कर देंगे, तो दरमियान वाला हिस्सा गायब हो जाएगा। तो दैट विल बी अ बिग क्रैक इन द प्रोसेस ऑफ डिसीजन मेकिंग। द नेक्स्ट इज योर elaboration. Whatever you are thinking, you should be able to elaborate that also. अगर आपने वो सोच सोच के अपने ही जहन में डाल लिया तो वो भी किसी काम का नहीं है। It may be correct, it may be true, it may be analytical, it may be based on facts, लेकिन उसका कोई नतीजा हमें नहीं मिलेगा till the time you elaborate it to those who are involved with you, or those who are affected, or those who are your party to take that collective or joint decision. The next type of thinking is analytical or logical thinking. Analytical thinking or logical thinking is not a very complicated affair. देखें, आप सोचते हैं तो ऐसे ही ना सोचते जाएं फजूल ही कि बैठे हुए आपने सर पे हाथ रखा हुआ है और you are just becoming a philosopher आपके पास कोई एम ही नहीं है, क्या फ़ायदा हुआ सोचने का। जब सोचते हैं तो सोच को तज्जियाती नुक्ता नज़र से हटने ना दें, नंबर 1। नंबर 2, लॉजिक को भी, मंतक को भी मद्देनज़र रखें कि जो आप सोच रहे हैं, व्हाट आर द रीजंस, व्हाई आर यू थिंकिंग लाइक दिस। इफ समथिंग हैज़ अकर्ड, well, it has occurred, but how it has occurred and why it has occurred. What were the circumstances which created that particular situation or occurrence or that crisis or that problem at a lower level? So, if your thinking is not creative, not logical, not analytical, this is all in vain. उसका आपको कोई फायदा पहुंचने का इम्कान नहीं है। सो अजीज तालिब इल्मों, फैसला साजी एक मुश्किल अमल है, जिसका मतलब ये हरगिज नहीं है कि इसको तर्क कर दिया जाए। ये लेसन लर्न्ड ये नहीं है कि ये मुश्किल अमल है तो इसको छोड़ ही दो। नहीं, अगर आप इसको छोड़ देंगे तो जिंदगी की हर अपॉर्चुनिटी आपको छोड़ देगी। वी मस्ट मास्टर दिस, वी मस्ट लर्न हाउ टू टेक डिसीजन, एंड what all we have discussed or studies in our lectures, if that much we make our take-off point and keep studying it and keep developing this knowledge, of course, there is no reason that by the grace of God Almighty Allah, we become good decision makers. अजीज तालिब इल्मों, हमने जो कुछ पढ़ा अपनी जहनी सलाहियतों को बरूए कार लाइए, मेहनत कीजिए, अपने आप में खुद एतमादी पैदा कीजिए, लिखने की सलाहियत पैदा कीजिए, सोच की सलाहियत पैदा कीजिए, और ये कभी मत सोचिए कि आप में किसी चीज़ की कमी है। आपको रब्बे कायनात ने वो सारा कुछ अता किया है जो दूसरे इंसानों को अता किया है। मुझे यकीन है और मेरी दुआ है कि इंशाअल्लाह ताला आप ही में से बेहतरीन फैसला साज हमारी पाक सरजमीन के लिए पैदा होंगे, और आप ही लोग हैं जो कल को कायद होंगे, और आप ही के हाथ में मुल्क की, कौम की बागडोर भी होगी। मेरी बहुत सारी दुआएं आपके साथ हैं, लेकिन एक शर्त ये ज़रूर है कि आपने इन चीज़ों को याद रखना है, इनको मेहनत करना है, इन पे गौर करना है, और ज़िंदगी की कामयाबी के लिए पीछे नहीं हटना, हौसला नहीं हारना, इम्पेशेंट नहीं होना। मैं इन्हीं दुआओं के साथ, इन्हीं कलमात के साथ इस लेक्चर के लिए आपको खुदा हाफिज़ कहते हूँ। इंशाअल्लाह अगले लेक्चर में फिर मुलाकात होगी। अल्लाह हाफिज़।